and gentlemen. Welcome into First Take on a Thursday. Thank you so much for being here with us. A lot to get into. Max Kellerman, Stephen A. in the house. Always makes me a happy lady. And how we feeling, gentlemen?
It's a rough day.
Yeah.
Let's get it on.
It is.
Let's get it on.
And we will get right into it. Coming up also, the Pats prepare to play the Texans tonight on Thursday Night Football, but do they have a chance if Jimmy G is unable to go? That coming up in a little bit, but we're going to start with the social injustice and violence that continues to plague our country. Athletes and coaches continue to take a stand against police shootings of African Americans. Warriors coach Steve Kerr had a strong stance, and Seahawks cornerback Richard Sherman chose to voice his concerns by declining questions from the media at a news conference, instead making a statement in the wake of more police shootings this week. Take a listen.
People are still missing the point. You know, the reason these guys are kneeling, the reason we're locking arms is to bring people together, to make people aware that this is not right. You know, it's not right for people to get killed in the street. We need black fathers to be in the community, to stay there for your kids, but they're getting killed in the street for nothing, for putting their hands on their cars. And I think that's the unfortunate part. That's the unfortunate place that we're living in, and something needs to be done. And so when a guy takes a knee, you can ignore it. You can say he's not being patriotic, he's not honoring the flag. I'm doing none of those things. I'm saying it straight up. This is wrong, and we need to do something.
No matter what side of the spectrum you're on, I would hope that every American is disgusted, with what is going on around the country. With what just happened in Tulsa 2 days ago with Terrence Crutcher. I mean, it doesn't matter what side you're on the Kaepernick stuff. You better be disgusted about the things that are happening.
Before their game last night, the WNBA's Indiana Fever knelt and locked arms during the national anthem in their own form of protest. Stephen A., are these protests a new reality?
I believe it is. More importantly, it's gotten to the point where I believe it should be. Obviously, when Colin Kaepernick first took his stance by not standing for the national anthem, although most of us religiously supported his right to do it because he's an American citizen and he has that right, most of us also said it's not something specifically that we would have elected to do, Max. At this point, it doesn't even matter. When you see the kind of things that have been transpiring, and the fact that it appears that there are some people, a few people in our law enforcement community that are not getting the message. It has riled up the black community, obviously to tremendous proportions. I mean, you watched the streets of Charlotte, North Carolina last night, and I've got friends and loved ones down in that area, and I'm here to tell you, they're talking about how it's absolute chaos. And you see the things that are transpiring. I mean, it looked like the 60s out there. Now, I was born in 1967, so please don't quote me, don't hold me to that in terms of trying to be an expert, because I wasn't born until 1967. And in your case, it was after 1970. And I'm not going to get started with you. It's probably younger than that, much younger than that. Much younger than that, yes, it's a compliment. The point that I'm trying to make is that in the end, what it comes down to is that this is not going anywhere. I applaud what Steve Kerr said. Steve Kerr's a good man. He's not just a damn good coach. He's a good man. And he's very conscientious, and he loves players, and he loves the NBA, and he loves a lot of people, period, because he's just a good person. And I think it was important to hear somebody like him say something the way that he did. Richard Sherman, can't say enough about how proud I am of him for stepping up and just saying these things are wrong. Something has to be done about it. Isaiah Washington, former actor on Grey's Anatomy, came out with a post basically asking us all to entertain what if, African Americans throughout the United States of America didn't show up to work for one day or didn't spend any money for one particular day, what kind of impact that would have. I would add to that, just like white folks supported black folks during the civil rights movement and helped propel that to elevated levels, the white community can join in that cause as well if they so chose, if something like that were to happen. I found myself a little bit gung-ho about that initially. And then I got back to the hotel last night, and I couldn't tear my eyes away from the television set to see what was transpiring. This has elevated to significant proportions, and something has to be done about it, and not enough of us have pointed to the leagues itself. And I'm not talking about the NBA, the NFL, or Major League Baseball. I'm talking about the owners who own teams in those leagues. Remember when there was an ABA-NBA merger? Remember when the USFL wasn't able to necessarily take off and be real legitimate competition to the National Football League? You know, antitrust legislation that ultimately prohibits the Major League Baseball from having competition. Why? Because you have owners with deep pockets who can speak because of their clout and their cachet. And as a result, it forced politicians and our political infrastructure to pay attention to what they desired, what they wanted, what they felt was best, and ultimately it provoked action. That's where we are right now. The players can only do but so much. The professional athletes can only do but so much. But these billionaire owners, like the Jerry Jones of the world, whose franchise is worth $4.2 billion, maybe, just maybe, it would be incredibly helpful that instead of talking about how much you abhor or disagree with the position of a Colin Kaepernick, you'd look at the bigger picture about how these African-American athletes, who you have no problem exploiting, okay, and using to your advantage so you can gain notoriety, popularity, and ultimately money. Maybe, just maybe, if you heightened your level of sensitivity when it came to the plight that exists within their respective communities, and you used your considerable muscle to talk to people and to strive to make a difference, I promise you, whereas Capitol Hill and others with the power to make change would just give professional athletes lip service, they wouldn't be able to do that with the likes of a Jerry Jones of the Dallas Cowboys, even a Daniel Snyder of the Washington Redskins, the Mark Cubans of the world of the Dallas Mavericks, who's a brilliant man, and others. People with money, with power, with cachet can make a difference. And I think that's what we're seeing this go in that direction. And quite frankly, we need it to.
A lot you just said there. We're going to talk about Cam Newton in a little while. I'm going to table that for a second. I said early on in the process when Cap took the knee and people were talking about it that I believed more players would take a knee and this would become a problem for those in professional sports who didn't like it. The question is this the new reality? The answer is that, yes, this is the new reality because what's being protested is an old reality. In fact, the reality of law enforcement attitudes and behavior toward people of color, if anything, and the lot in life in American life, in that respect, people of color, has likely improved over the years. Think about that for a second. The difference now is cameras and phones. Social media means that awareness has been heightened. Yeah. So if you are horrified because you are now seeing this stuff and you weren't aware of it before, think about what that means if, in fact, this has gotten better over the years. It used to be worse. So this is an old reality, and people are fed up. Now, why is this coming to the fore to the extent that it is in terms of protest? Is it just about technological advances, cameras and phones, and social media? No, it's not just about that. It's also, by the way, to the credit in this respect of the NFL, for example. These are college-educated people, for the most part. You know, the players that you see on the field are college-educated. Why are we hearing about it now? Black men are in higher profile positions, like, for example, the quarterback position, which at one point in time was, you know, ask Warren Moon about this. If you were black, they would try to make you play another position, even if you had great success at quarterback. Now you have a league with far more African-American quarterbacks, and they are college-educated, and they are outraged at what has happened and what they have seen and experienced, and in Kaepernick's case, been made increasingly aware of as an adult. And they're using their positions to try to affect change. Now, Jackie Robinson wasn't in a position to protest. You know, he broke the color barrier in baseball, but Muhammad Ali was. There were black players in the past in the NFL, in the last several decades, who were not in the same position to protest as Kaepernick is, as Cam Newton could be, or he's in that position. Certainly how he chooses to use his position is up to him. But that's why I think we're seeing this new reality. It's an old reality. It's easier to disseminate the message with social media and phones and cameras, technology. And you have people from groups who have been who have been oppressed by the reality, now in positions where they can do something about it. I think that's what we're seeing. So new reality, yes. And here's the other thing. For those who would say that's a bad new reality, I just want to enjoy sports. I get that. I really do. I sympathize with that position because sports are a great distraction. And oftentimes you want to escape the world and we get on our timelines, what is this, news now? Like, you know, CNN is, I want this to be, I want to watch sports. And I get that because sometimes I feel the same way. I just want to get away from it all.
So do I.
However, I don't see another way to, I mean, I'm sure others have, and others do have different points of view. From my point of view, I find it very difficult to say that someone in Kaepernick's position or a position like that who takes a courageous stand and tries to heighten awareness of important social issues and pressing social issues, I can't criticize. Well, I'm happy that they're doing it. I think they deserve praise.
Let me tell you why this is not going anywhere. America didn't realize what it was asking for. Here you are. You're the United States of America. We've got sports, and you want these athletes to play, go out there and perform to the best of their ability. But as the numbers proliferated, as million-dollar contracts and tape delay and second fiddle sports to Major League Baseball ultimately ended up usurping baseball in terms of popularity, generating billions upon billions of dollars, becoming mega businesses, conglomerates, corporations, etc. They asked the professional athlete to be more than just an athlete. You asked them to be a role model. You asked them to be someone that helped you parent your kid. You asked them to be somebody that helped you uplift communities. You asked the professional athletes. You basically compelled them to be more than just play games and go home. So as a result, since you've asked them to be so conscientious about so many other things, okay, mind you, these are professional athletes that come from impoverished and disenfranchised backgrounds where there's liquor stores on every corner, weed spots everywhere, strip clubs and all of this other stuff. You're putting this stuff in their face, all right, which is temptation, which is bad stuff, which is not something that can ultimately propel them to new heights. But then you're asking them to go out there and be role models and be individuals who uplift communities. And you're asking them to do these things when they're a very young age and they haven't even matured to certain levels. So once you did that and forced them to become conscientious, now they're saying you're not going to be the only one that defines what we should get conscientious about. This is what we're conscientious about. And now it's one thing to go to the protest, but don't expect it to stop because, my goodness, when we talk about these owners, again, I'm getting back to them. Because if you're an owner, it's an uncomfortable silence that's existing right now. What about when those same players that's talking to the community, that's talking to political, politicians or what have you, what about when they turn around and they start looking at the owners who employ them and they say, excuse me, you have this cachet to generate business for yourself in a multitude of areas. Jerry Jones is the owner for the Dallas Cowboys, okay? But that billion-dollar playpen that he built, what just happened there? I believe it was a fight with Canelo Alvarez. So you, in other words, you're able to do business.
Well, he's been disappointed by the Anthem protests, according to him.
I know that, but I'm saying you're generating different businesses outside of football because of who you are and what football has enabled you to capture. Well, what happens when the players start looking at a guy like Jerry Jones? And I'm not trying to pour it on him because I'm not getting on him. I'm just talking about an owner.
Example of an owner.
I'm getting on him. I'm saying he's saying he's disappointed by the protest.
What about when players look at you and say, well, what are you going to do? Why can't you do something? What about when these players do that to these owners? Because eventually they're going to do it.
Incidentally, to bring it back to the beginning of this, which was the Anthem protest, it's interesting how the NFL he encourages players to stand but doesn't mandate it. The NBA does mandate it. Right. And I believe that's connected to the same reason the NBA has a dress code. Because the NBA, once upon a time, was perceived as a quote-unquote black league. And the NFL, because players in big, high-profile positions, or men in high-profile positions, were head coaches and quarterbacks, and they were white, the NFL, even though it had a large African-American population of players, was not perceived as a quote-unquote black league. And so there was a stricter enforcement of a code of conduct and dress that would suggest to middle America and to people who are uncomfortable with the idea, rather, I should say, of a black league, that, wait, no, this is non-threatening. Yep. And now it's going to be interesting to see what the NBA response is, since since dissent is not permissible in the NBA along these lines.
And as far as the question being, is this our new reality? I mean, of course it is, because the violence isn't going away. We have a news story every day where somebody's getting killed. So why would they stop?
We can't avoid it.
And we've had 20 players now who have also followed suit with Colin Kaepernick in terms of protesting since he initially did. But I want to focus on Cam Newton now. He expressed anguish over police shootings, making a rare stand on social issues during his news conference Wednesday. He addressed the shootings in Charlotte that turned to racial unrest. Here's more with Cam.
It could have happened, hell, in Atlanta. It could have happened in Los Angeles. It doesn't matter. It's embarrassing, you know, for things to just keep happening. I'm an African American. You know, I am not happy what or how, you know, the justice have been, you know, kind of dealt with over the years, you know, the state of oppression in our community. But we also, as black people, have to do right by ourselves. You know, we can't be hypocrites. My big thing is always holding people accountable. You know, no matter what the race is, no matter what the gender is, no matter what the age is, we all have to hold each other accountable. And that's where we're living in.
Stephen A., what was your reaction to Cam there, holding everybody accountable?
I was proud of him. A couple of weeks ago, I jumped all over Cam Newton when he did the interview with Trey Wingo, because my attitude was, just don't say anything, but don't sit in front of the camera acting like you're oblivious to racial oppression. Talking about 1/8 of an inch of skin is the difference between all of us, and then after that, all of us are the same. I don't want to hear that. There ain't a black person alive who wanted to hear that, because the fact of the matter is that 1/8 of an inch of skin is the excuse that oppressors have used to oppress a certain segment of our population for decades, if not centuries. Having said all of that, I thought he stepped up yesterday. I thought Cam Newton, you know, reminded us of who he is. I thought that he spoke sincerely from the heart, as opposed to somebody who was petrified of saying the wrong thing because he was scared of how it would be construed or interpreted. And that's why I was proud of him. Now, there's going to be a lot of black people that's going to get on Cam Newton, because especially during a time like this, for him to utter the words that we also got to do right by ourselves. We can't be hypocrites. And that's all they're going to hear. And they're going to be all over him. I'm going to tell those people to go to hell. I don't want to hear that. He's right. He's absolutely right. And there is a certain level of accountability that we have to accept for ourselves, because if we're not caring enough about ourselves, we can't expect anybody to care about us. Having said all of that, had he focused on it and glossed over what's transpiring now in the streets of Charlotte, North Carolina, what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma the other day. And by the way, you remember the female cop that shot the guy in Tulsa? She's on paid administrative leave, okay? And you heard a guy from the helicopter yelling that that guy looks like a mean character, or he looks like a threat. Come to find out, at least this is what they're saying. I don't know if it's factually incorrect, but what they're saying is the guy that was in the helicopter saying that that guy in Tulsa looked threatening from the helicopter, mind you, 1,000 feet up in the air. Apparently that was the cop's husband. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what they were saying. I was getting calls. I got numerous calls on my radio show yesterday with people saying that, but I don't know. My only point is saying what I'm saying about Cam is this. At the end of the day, there's two sides to this, and both sides are absolutely right. Absolutely. As African Americans, we got to make sure we care about one another, watch over one another, and not kill one another. You know, black on black crime, yes, there's white on white crime, there's Latino on Latino crime. As Dr. Michael Eric Dyson said, it's neighbors killing neighbors. It's not black on black, white, Latino, Latino. It's neighbors killing neighbors. But I play a numbers game, Max. I'm thinking about 66% of the population being white, 17% of the Latino population existing in America. That doesn't even include the 11+ million illegal immigrants, if you want to, or 20 million, depending on who you listen to, and they're 27% of the voting bloc, or the 13% of the African American community. The numbers are low for us. So when we do harm to ourselves, it's devastating. Having said all of that, while I applaud Cam Newton for pointing that out, and I appreciate it and will defend his right to do it because he's absolutely right in what he's saying, I also appreciated the fact that as a star athlete in the NFL, based out of Charlotte for the Carolina Panthers, he opened his mouth and spoke up about how this is embarrassing, this is disappointing, and something needed to be said, because those words needed to come out of Cam Newton's mouth, and they did, and I'm proud of him for it.
I don't agree on your assessment of Cam Newton speaking here. I think what he did was take a specific instance, because it's now at his doorstep, it's in North Carolina that this is happening, and he made it general. This specific instance, saying wait for the facts to come out in this case, is fair, I guess. I always think it's good, and that's usually my first reaction. Let's wait till the facts come out. But he took a specific instance. He started talking about black African-American responsibility within the community and da-da-da-da-da. And that's not what this is about, which is, and Frank Luntz, the GOP image consultant, has been consulting with the Panthers, according to reports. And Cam's answer sounded to me like someone who has been coached up in terms of how to spin an image. Look, let's deal with this specific instance, which is really what Cam is being asked about. Well, this stuff keeps on going on, but hey, black people also have to take responsibility. Yeah, this specific instance, let's wait for the facts to come out. Here's the issue. In North Carolina, they just signed a law where the police do not have to release video without being compelled by the courts. Right. Now, the law's not yet in effect, but it's been signed into law, and so they're citing that already, the police are, why they're not releasing video. Let's wait till the facts come out. The problem is when the facts come out, what winds up happening? Okay, ProPublica had an analysis of FBI data, for example, between 2010 and 12. Black teens, 21 times more likely to be shot and killed by police nationally than white teens. 21 times. So what? Okay, and then what happens when they actually, when due process takes place? Philip Stinson, who's an associate professor of criminology, Bowling Green study, 13 officers have been convicted of manslaughter for on-duty killings since 2005. So the sense is that even when the facts do come out, justice is not served for black people, and that Cam is being asked about this specific instance where the claim of the victim's family is that he was holding a book, and the claim of the police is that he was holding a gun, and video exists that the police have not yet released. I think there's more to be said than this is bad and black people need to accept more responsibility.
There's a couple of things. First of all of those facts I appreciate. Obviously, they're very poignant. We know this to exist. Nobody's denying that. But let's make sure that we're fair in this regard. Number one, Cam Newton is not a statesman. Cam Newton, Cam Newton is not a historian either. Cam Newton knows what he knows. You're watching the police reports. You probably read in the local newspapers. There's one interpretation, one version coming from the family saying that he had a book. You got another interpretation from the police saying that he had a weapon.
And there's video.
Hold on.
Won't release.
I understand that. The police officer who shot him was black. The police chief was black. So now we get into a bigger issue here. And if we're talking about just the specter, the possibility of this individual having a weapon, now we get into a bigger issue because, see, one of the things that need to be mentioned, and this is very, very important, I know we got to move on, but it's important that I say this because it's incredibly critical. Max is coming from a perspective of right and wrong. I am not disputing anything that you're saying. I'm 1,000% with you, and I agree with what you're saying. My point as a black man is I want you to live. So now, in other words, what I'm saying to you, if you did have a gun, if the police interpretation is right, I want people to hear that because I want black individuals to know, don't get out your car with a gun. I want them to know, roll down those damn windows. I want them to know, put both hands on the steering wheel. Don't get me wrong, because Richard Sherman is right when he sits up there and says, how am I supposed to go and lecture and be a conduit for change, influencing young minds and kids and telling them if you obey the law, you'll have nothing to worry about, when we've got guys obeying the law. And there is something to worry about. I totally get that. My point to you is those are the incidences where we've got to bring that up. But there are other instances where if you indeed are provoking the police, you don't need to do that. You have to understand that to some degree, if they're law enforcement officials, they do have the power, and you have to address it accordingly. Because if you don't, you're going to get yourself killed. So Max Kellerman and everybody that thinks like him is absolutely right. You have no dissenting voice here. I'm saying to you, we're thinking about the facts in terms of what's right and wrong. I'm thinking about surviving another day so you can convey and display those facts and live to fight another day as opposed to taking yourself out. That's what I'm thinking about.
I totally appreciate that point. What I'm saying about Cam is we've now reversed positions where originally I said, look, Cam's not a statesman. Cam is, entitled to say, look, I feel generally this way. And you felt otherwise, like he sounded like he was worried about his brand. You now feel that he's saying something. I now feel that he's being brand conscious. I just want to say that I think the reason the problem is going on, and I would have liked to hear him address it a little more specifically along these lines, there's a big difference between a gun and a book. The police have video they're refusing to release. And I think the reason this is really going on is that based on the statistics and our history, even if the video was released and turns out it was a book and not a gun, justice is unlikely to be served. That's what's happening in the streets of North Carolina right now.
Yeah.
And one more stat I want to leave people with. This was as of yesterday. So Washington Post has been tracking police shootings. 698 people have been shot in 2016. Now, 173 of them are African American, but as you alluded to earlier, only 12% of the population is African American, 6% men. So those numbers are astounding when you're looking at those proportions. Exactly. We will leave it there.